Hi, friends. Today we begin a four-part focus on neurodiversity in the world of MKs and TCKs. It is long overdue, and it comes out of the realization that though I've had neurodivergent students in my classes and in my life for so many years, what little I knew was insufficient to understand them or love them well. So this is a small scope first step toward learning more. Now, by no means will this be a comprehensive thesis on this too often overlooked and misunderstood segment of the cross-cultural population. I will point you to resources that can help provide more of that for you if that's what you're looking for, a more clinical exploration of neurodivergence. But for now, I hope that this will at least open the conversation and maybe prompt some curiosity in you that will have you reaching for more information on your own. The series is going to roll out in 4 increments. Today, you're watching or listening to an interview with Jenilee Goodwin. She is a former missionary, an author, a speaker, a life coach, and mom to 3 neurodivergent MKs. Her lived experience and her hard-won wisdom felt like a really good place to start. I'll be releasing a handful of other increments of this neurodiversity series in the next couple of weeks. An article that focuses on the intersection of TCK traits and neurodiversity. It's fascinating. A compilation of videoed interviews with 12 neurodivergent adult TCKs telling their own stories from their perspective. And then a videoed interview with the mom of a child who is level 3 on the autism spectrum. This is a level that does not allow him to express himself or to tell his own story. And I think it's important for us to realize that this is part of the spectrum as well. All of these resources will be available on the Pondering Purple podcast as well as on YouTube. And I do encourage you, if you can, to view them there, because body language and I feel like facial expressions are going to be key to understanding all that is said in this series of resources. I will link to both the audio and the video versions in this episode's show notes. And finally, if you'd like to be notified when new resources come out, I'll also have an email link in the show notes, and you can use that to let me know that you want to be on the notification list. I will use your email only for that. With all that out of the way, I am delighted to begin this short series on neurodiversity by introducing you to one of the clearest voices on the topic, Jenilee Goodwin. Here she is. So this is Jenilee. And I met Jenilee at a conference called Synergy back in March, and she was our plenary speaker on the topic of neurodiversity, which I have never seen a focus on in any of the previous conferences that I've been to. And she was really one of the main reasons that I pushed myself to begin this little mini series that is just introductory on this topic, because I realized how much I didn't know, even having taught for 20 years, and how much the world of ministry in general doesn't know. So in order to honor our neurodiverse people, and in order to bring some clarity and some understanding, we're just going to have some conversations over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm thrilled, Jenilee, to begin with you. Can you just tell us who you are and why this topic is so central to your life and your speaking and your teaching and your coaching?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me a part of this series. It's such a good topic, and it just needs talked about so that people can have a higher awareness. So I love that you're doing this. This is special to me because I'm a mom of 3 neurodivergent girls, young adult girls, and was in neurodiverse marriage, have lived overseas 12 years, some stateside ministry, and seeing it in some of the children that we served overseas and in the States, and just how little is really known or talked about neurodiversity in our faith communities. And so, of course, with my own girls and having homeschooled them and kind of figured my way through it before we knew I didn't even know what neurodiversity was, or autism, or ADHD, or learning disabilities, or slow processing. I didn't know any of that. So kind of just finding my way. And then as I did learn more, wanting education, wanting to know what is this and how do we talk about it, and what is happening in our world today with more of it, and why, and all of that just really interested me. And then in the coaching that I do, helping other families navigate it as well.
If you're comfortable doing so, what can you tell us about your own family and what you've had to learn as a mom to these 3 daughters of yours?
Yeah, I have three girls. They're all close together. I had three under three at one point. And in children's ministry and family ministry and seeing other kids interact and thinking there's something a little different with my girls. They're kind of quirky. And my middle one, especially from the time she was a baby, thinking she doesn't like to be held. She doesn't really look me in the eye. She's really difficult to comfort, and just not sure, some stomach issues and sleep issues, and um, trying to figure out what is different, and talking to the pediatrician. And at this point, she was about 2 or 3, and the pediatrician's, oh no, she's fine. She looks us in the eye. She's communicating. And just me thinking, I don't think so. Something's different. And over the years, my middle, finding out high IQ, auditory processing. So slowly bits and pieces were coming together, but still they said no autism. My youngest, slow to read, really slow processing, slow short-term memory, just really struggling, super smart, wanting to be up with all the other kids and do all the things, but she just couldn't keep up, and still being told she might have some ADHD, but practitioners, doctors acted like it was no big deal. My girls were fine. And that kind of led us into their early elementary years and going overseas. And then you throw in French vowel sounds, British vowel sounds, West Africa, all of the extra things. And, oh, they're TCKs. That sometimes it causes delays, or they go back a little bit, or, there's just lots of reasons why that can happen in TCKs. So you're like, okay. But realizing on our first furlough that, okay, it's time to get some testing done. Let's figure out what's going on. And then more as high school, taking psychology classes, my middle daughter was like, I have autism. I know I have autism. So getting an educational psychologist involved, and it just is such a journey, really, for all families with kids, let alone TCKs. And then you layer girls on the spectrum that we don't really know a lot about and we don't recognize quite as quickly. So a lot of trial and error and figuring it out for my girls.
It feels like such a broad umbrella term, neurodiversity, which is actually a word that I struggle to say. Neuro or neuro. I'm not sure which of those two is accurate because I'm a TCK and the whole pronunciation thing. But to add on top of that, the neurodiversity of switching languages and switching cultural customs and norms. And I can't imagine how many layers it adds to already challenging things in the world of TCKs and MKs. I feel like a good place to begin is to ask you for a definition of neurodiversity that people will understand, because there's so many of them out there. Some of them take pages, some of them are too short of a sentence. How would you explain it to people who don't know much about it yet?
I just like the definition from Cleveland Clinic that it's a brain difference. Their brain works differently than what we consider a neurotypical brain. And it's not that their brain is broken. It's not that their brain can't do other things. There's education can be harder, but it's because of a difference in processing information, not necessarily that something's wrong. So a lot of times we hear the word disorder for autism spectrum or ADHD, and we think it's something wrong. It's not necessarily something wrong. It has complications in a neurotypical world, but their brain works differently.
Yeah. I mentioned to you earlier that I've been interviewing neurodivergent MKs and TCKs, and one of the things that has come up nearly 100% in all of the interviews is that they needed to be told, this isn't wrong. You're not bad because your brain just works differently. It's not something you did or a punishment for something. It is the way your brain works, right? I think we sometimes avoid the conversation because we're afraid of words we're not supposed to say that used to be part of the vocabulary and are no longer part of the vocabulary. Are there any words that you would caution us against using in the realm of neurodivergence?
There are. So Asperger's is what we used to call high functioning autism. That's now level 1 autism. And then there's level 2 autism and level 3. most of what we see in the conversation we're having around TCKs, it does tend to be level 1. So it means they just need less support than others. Level 2 and level 3, it's kind of a gradual, they need more support. A lot of people don't like the term high functioning anymore because then that means that there's a low functioning, and it can be offensive. But in a lot of ways, it's still a good descriptor of the different places people can be on the spectrum. It's just such a more beautiful way to talk about the brain differences, is that's just this big spectrum. And whether they're dealing with learning disabilities or processing or memory or executive function, a person with autism or ADHD, in this neurodiverse spectrum, they're falling at different points and they have a different collection of pieces of autism on the spectrum, and it's can paint a different picture with every person.
Is a person's neurodiversity something that can be exacerbated by cross-cultural experience, or is it a static situation?
Definitely can be high stress, culture changes, transition, lack of routines, things like that can definitely make language changes. Then you throw in environment, noise levels, dust and street noises, and fast paced, lots of people squished in a taxi definitely can exacerbate a neurodiverse brain.
And that list that you just gave us actually is evidence that there are so many factors under that umbrella. I mean, dust is one of the
Yeah.
things you said, and noise, right?
Yep.
There's just so
Yep.
much that neurotypical people like me cannot relate to, and yet it is very real for this large number of members of our population.
Yes. Yes. And if they don't know, it definitely makes them feel broken or different, or I can't do this, because they don't know why it's so hard. And it doesn't seem to be hard for other people. It doesn't seem to be hard for those MKs. Those MKs are doing fine. That TCK is doing great. Why is this so hard for me? And they may not even recognize it's the noise level, it's the lights, it's the dust, it's the people, and just feels like they can't keep up. And it generally leads to some kind of burnout and frustration. It impacts mental health. It can definitely be very challenging for families navigating this and not knowing, why is this so hard?
Yeah. Anecdotally speaking, there are no statistics that I know of for this. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like there might be a larger percentage of neurodivergent people in
Mm-hmm.
missionary or cross-cultural contexts than in monocultural contexts. Is that just my observation, or is there some kind of foundation to that impression?
Yeah, I don't know that, again, there's any evidence on this, but it does seem like there are higher numbers,
Mhm.
depending on the kind of cross-cultural work, if it's language, and figuring out translation. And if that's a special interest of someone on the spectrum, that's going to be a very attractive type of work for them. If they're adventurous, the ADHD, and they like new things and they're always wanting to try and they're impulsive, then this overseas life can be great for that. So there's those reasons. But then I also think, to your point earlier, it becomes more visible what's easy to
Yeah.
mask in your own culture, what's easy to kind of put up with. And you know, the clothes that feel good, you know, the restaurants that don't have as much noise, you know, how to navigate your own culture. You take that into a different context and it's going to become more visible. So it's probably a combination of, it can be attractive, fun, different kind of lifestyle that fits someone who feels different or thinks differently. And it becomes more visible, I think, under the stress and culture shock and parts of overseas life.
Yeah, and I think part of what you're referring to is that the attractiveness of the overseas life and the hyper focus will bring parents, missionary parents, into the ministry world because it fits those aspects of their
Mhm.
neurodivergence. Is that the right word for that?
Yeah.
Neurodivergence?
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize that I'm reading more and more about is that about 80% of children who are neurodivergent have parents who are as well. So, what you're explaining there is that a lot of their parents might end up on the mission field because of their hyper focus on doing one thing and their zeal to do it
Mhm.
if, the ADHD component is there. I would add the theory that sometimes people who don't feel like they fit in one culture will go to a place where they're not expected to 100% fit in the adoptive culture as
Yes.
well. And that could be
Yep.
an appeal of living
Mhm.
cross-culturally. And then the 80% is 70 to 90, but a lot of people just kind of land on the 80% number, would explain why so many children have inherited, for reasons that are still to some degree mysterious, right? That they've inherited these
Mhm.
traits
Yeah.
from their parents.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. Yeah,
Yep. Definitely contributes to the number of TCKs on the field because it's in
yeah,
mom and dad. Mhm.
that's right. And mom and dad might not know it,
Might
right?
not know.
Um,
Mhm.
those are the stories I'm hearing from the adult TCKs that I'm speaking with. Mom and dad didn't realize that they had those traits too, but they saw them in their
Yep.
children. And so that can inhibit the kind of testing or even just asking questions that could help to
Yeah.
reframe what they're
Yep.
seeing.
Absolutely.
So we have this combination of TCK traits, which a lot of times set them slightly apart from monocultural peers. They do some things differently. They struggle in some areas that their monocultural peers might not. And then you have TCKs who also are in this world of neurodiversity. Are there traits of some of those neurodiversity aspects of OCD, of ADHD, of autism that are obscured by TCK traits? So we assume that it's a TCK thing when it actually might be something other.
Yeah, absolutely. The sensory overload, any TCK can feel that when the street's really busy and they've traveled all night and there's loud noises and new things and new foods and new smells. It can be overwhelming for any kid. So it's easy to say, yeah, all MKs struggle with that, or, they're resilient, they'll bounce back, maybe struggling with routine. Lots of kids can struggle with not having a routine. And when that changes in the transition, um, a lot of TCKs learn how to mask really well. They can try to fit
Yes.
into different situations. And so a lot of TCKs could say, I mask, I pretend like I know what's going on. I can nod and act like, I can stand on a platform and smile. I know how to try to fit in. And that's what a lot of times our neurodiverse kids are also naturally doing. So there's definitely a lot of overlap that one could mask for the other.
I hear some of them saying that they're actually, when they're masking, they're also just onboarding information. They're getting raw data that they figure they'll figure out later. For now, I'm just going to nod and smile and and ingest what's
Yep.
happening around me. And hopefully, when I get to a quiet space, I can start to sort through it and make sense of it,
Yep.
which is a stressful way to live. And I think the TCK
Very.
trait of not making waves and of not distracting from the work for God that mom and dad are doing, I think that might even intensify the thought that they
Yes.
need to just look like they fit in because mom and
Yep.
dad are doing God's work. Do you see that?
Yep. Yeah, I have one moment specifically. We were out in a village in the desert. It was about 112 degrees,
Oh,
dust. We'd been at church for 4 hours in the morning with the drums and the music, and then lunch at the pastor's house where it's just, long, and the languages and the other kids wanting to play with them and the sand and just all the things. And then we go into a Bible club, and I could tell my girls were falling apart.
mm,
But I was like, this, it's just one day. You're trying to push them, you're trying to help them go. We need to be here for this Bible club. And I could see my middle daughter specifically kind of just like going into what I now know is a meltdown, but for her, it's very much a shutdown. She can go nonverbal, and we needed to leave.
mm.
And the girls, in the car, we're sorry, we have to leave. We're sorry, mom and dad, and it's like, no, it's okay. It's, we understand. And then fast forward a couple years, we find out about the autism, that it really is there and that there is sensory issues. And an occupational therapist, I came in to pick Annalise up, and she said, Annalise did so good today. She kept her hands in the sand for like 3 minutes. And I was like, what? We lived in the desert. And come to find out, Annalise, the sand had always really bothered her. It caused a bunch of sensory issues for her. And we lived in the desert and never knew. And so as they're unpacking
Wow.
their TCK experience and realizing how many things were very difficult for them, and me kind of seeing the difficulty, but not necessarily knowing why, or any of us having the words to put to why that was hard, it's interesting to look back and see how impacted we were without knowing it.
Can you think of any other aspects of missionary life, common aspects of missionary life that could be difficult for autistic people or for people with ADHD and other forms of
Yeah.
neurodivergence?
Yeah, a lot of neurodivergent kids, especially, deal with food issues. You know, they
Mm.
don't like the texture of applesauce or bananas. They don't like the strings in the bananas, or the rice feels sticky in their mouth. Or in here, we're like, TCKs eat.
Everything. That's what we do. That's one of our strengths.
Yes.
Can you put into
Hmm.
perspective, you use the words they don't like the texture, they don't like the taste, but it's more than that, right? So it's not something that, well,
It
eat it a little bit more
really
and you'll be fine.
Yes, it really is more than that. My youngest struggles with this the most. Her ADHD, she loves food, she loves eating, she loves trying new things, but she will feel full all the time. And then she'll get busy. She doesn't even think about eating. So if she's in one of those seasons that food does not appeal to her at all, and trying to make her eat is almost painful for her. There's times that chicken, if it isn't cooked the right way, and I think of how many times we ate chicken in a village that was maybe not even edible. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have been eating it, and thinking she sat and just ate it. But now she'll talk about, just like, if the chicken has a funny color to it, or a the texture's off, she can't. She's like, Mom, I can't even look at it. It can make them feel sick. And they just can't swallow it.
Which again is where it is so essential to know who your children are and how their brains work so that you're not
Yes,
disciplining it, right?
right. Yep. Yeah, my
Wow.
middle daughter, carrots, she can chew and chew and chew. And when she was little, she'd have her cheeks just like full of carrots. And it would be like, Annalise, swallow the carrots. And she just couldn't. She could not get the texture of that, like, chewed up carrot down her throat. And so she does not touch them today. It's
Yeah.
just and that's as a TCK, and you have to eat it all. Eat what's on your plate. Don't complain. Don't show on your face what we put these kids through without really knowing it.
That's right. Without knowing it. And
Hmm.
I want to make that really clear as you just have, because I don't want parents to feel like they have intentionally harmed their children. What you don't
Right.
know, you can't act on, which is why we're trying to
Yep.
broaden this conversation a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The most frequently referred to forms of neurodiversity seem to be autism and ADHD.
Hmm.
Can you give us an understanding of what those two things are so that people can tell the difference, since they're all under the same umbrella, can tell the difference between those two, knowing that sometimes also they're combined, which is
Yep.
ADHD, right? If I'm
Yep.
remembering correctly. So give us a way to maybe distinguish those two from each other.
Yeah. It's actually getting harder, I think, to
Mhm.
tell the difference between the two, because the traits overlap so much anyway. And there's trait overlap between autism, ADHD, even some OCD that's maybe not a true OCD, but there's that very specific way of doing things. And just this overlap makes it very difficult. But autism is generally more your black and white thinking, very rigid thinking, sensory issues of some kind, very ordered thinking. They're self-referencing, so it's very difficult to see someone else's perspective. They naturally
Mm.
just see their own. A lot of times it can be associated with a higher IQ, but that's not necessarily always true. ADHD is going to be more your impulsivity, your executive function, lack of focus, just difficulty staying in a task, difficulty starting a task. A lot of more of your executive function things can be present with ADHD. But again, the overlap is so great and then that place on the spectrum, like I talked about earlier, it is difficult to tell the difference between the two.
Mhm. There's somebody, you'll be able to tell me who it is. I'm not remembering, I think, her name right now, who said, essentially, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
Yeah.
Everyone is
Yeah.
so different. Do you know who said that? Who the source is of that
I
quote?
think it was Temple Grandin, but I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes, I
Is
think
it
it is
Temple?
Temple
Yeah.
Grandin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want people who are listening or watching to think that, oh, now I know everything I need to know. If there's somebody who is autistic, this is who they are. No, there is such a
Mm-mm.
sliding scale of so many things. Um,
Yes.
right? We don't want to
Yeah.
oversimplify this very complicated
No.
thing.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
example of that is as stereotypically, we think of a person with autism as maybe a lack of empathy, or it seems like they don't care. And we're
Right.
finding that's not true. That's called alexithymia, and they just have a difficulty expressing how they feel or expressing those emotions. So the way we talk about it matters so much because we're finding out so much more about what it means to
Mhm.
be an autistic person, and it's not always what we thought it was.
Yeah. And then you add the cross-cultural experience piece to it. Are there some other reasons that we haven't alluded to yet that make it more difficult to recognize neurodivergence in cross-cultural or missionary circles? Are there other reasons that sometimes it gets either overlooked or just not recognized?
Yeah, I think for a family that's new to the field, they're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to struggle with getting tasks done. You know, they're tired. There's this new culture. They're at capacity in what they can learn and what they can do, and they're trying language and money and new foods and all the things at the
Mhm.
same time. So then that's going to look like it's going to mask executive function skills where maybe they're actually struggling to initiate going out and opening their bank account. We can just say, well, that's culture shock. All families deal with that. And it's actually executive function.
Mm.
And for our kids at international schools, we're going to say, well, they're around a bunch of new cultures, a bunch of new kids, new languages. And really, it's, the sensory overload or they're having a sensory processing, slow processing, auditory, spatial. There's so many other things that can be at play, but we have good
Yeah.
reasons our TCKs are also struggling with those same things.
How do we create, even within a family, but even within a ministry subculture, how do we create a place where the right questions are asked and where people who
Mhm.
are struggling have vocabulary and permission to tell
Mhm.
somebody? That's a huge
Yeah.
question. I'm so sorry to just throw it at you.
It's a good question though. In this topic, we can especially since it's a faith community, we can, spiritualize it almost like, well, they're just struggling, or this is a discipline issue, or maybe they're rebellious, or just, let's pray. Let's pray that they start doing better in school. Let's pray that they start understanding. We can really spiritualize it. And then in our faith communities too, a lot of times we think labels are bad. So we don't really want to see it or ask the questions. And the label itself isn't bad because it's not a brokenness. It's just a difference in how they're thinking. And so it means they need a different set of expectations or a different way of doing things or a different way of being taught different things. And when we let ourselves
Mhm.
really look and admit there might be something that's making this harder, there might be a reason why your teenager's in burnout more than just culture shock, and start letting ourselves ask the questions and then seek help. I think sometimes we don't want to admit how much we're struggling as a family or how much our kids are struggling because we hear things like, oh, kids are resilient, they'll be fine. Um, and we're just tired of hearing that. And so speaking up, asking for help. And then there was a point that I had to go outside our organization, outside, our member care, and just talk to an educational psychologist. What is going on? And really get some professional feedback on how my girls were doing. And that was really helpful. But it takes getting out, seeing it, letting yourself see it, ask for help, get professional opinion, to really help these kids, that there could be more going on. And if there isn't, and they really are struggling, there's help for that too. If you find out there isn't neurodivergence and your teen is struggling, then there's help for that too.
I feel like sometimes you've alluded to this. The parents are so overwhelmed that they can't really focus
Yep.
on anything specifically. And so part of the answer might also be for parents to care for their own needs and their own stress so that they
Mm-hmm.
can lower their own temperature and be able to clearly see what's going on around them as well. I feel like so many missionaries live in high pressure, high stress, hyperactivated everything, and that makes
Yep.
it much less likely to see the subtle things that they might be missing. Do you think that's a factor?
Very true. And neurodiverse marriage is
Mm.
incredibly challenging.
Which you have
And
experience
especially
with as well.
I have experience with that as well. When a spouse has lack of executive function skills, when there is lack of motivation, lack of focus, easy distractibility, very ordered thinking, very black and white, very rigid, and you're like, why? What? And then stress, living overseas, culture shock is bringing it out even more. Neurodiverse marriage is incredibly difficult. And statistically, especially without knowing, there are high conflict, high stress relationships. And so when all of that is going on and
Mm.
you're just overwhelmed with life and marriage and transition, and it does require self-care and really taking care of things that need taken care of so that you can focus on your kids and focus on your
Yeah.
marriage. Hmm.
Yeah. You've already made so many great suggestions or offered so many great suggestions to parents. Is there anything else that you would like to tell parents who are either suspecting that their children might be on the spectrum
Hmm.
or neurodivergent in some way, or parents who know that there's something different about the way their children's brain functions? Do you have anything else, any other suggestions or encouragements for them?
Yeah, trust what you're seeing. I wish I
Mm.
would have trusted myself sooner to advocate that something really was different, and not went through all the years of, well, it's just, they're learning a new language, or we just moved countries, or they just left grandma. I wish I would have trusted that something else was going on. I wish I would have sought assessments sooner and just let's see. If I have this gut feeling something's going on, I wish I would have gotten professional help sooner. Learn about sensory. If your kid is saying this is scratchy, this is I can't sleep, this is too hot, they might not just be complaining, and learning sensory stuff is really important. Um, Build routines as much as possible. I knew that was important for my girls. And so when we were on home assignment or furlough and staying in multiple hotels, I had bins of things that I took with us. And I went into the hotel
Mm.
room and made the beds, put the stuff out, made it as as similar as possible to the last hotel room as I could, so that they could
Hmm.
come in and that room was, their stuff was there, their blankets were there, their pajamas were ready, things like that, that I wish I would have done more of and
Yeah.
kept more things the same. Find community. Find other families
Yeah.
that are dealing with this, other moms that are navigating neurodiverse kids. A lot of times it's like, why does parenting feel so hard? Because parenting neurodiverse kiddos can be really hard. And so finding community, other parents who get it, who know what you mean when you say, my child is starving because they refuse to eat any of the food, and that it wasn't a disciplinary thing or a disobedient thing. They just couldn't eat it. And a mom who's like, yeah, that's so hard. it's really important to find community and find support, somebody to talk to about how hard it is.
You brought up furlough or home ministry assignment, and I feel like that's a whole other topic that we could be covering. I
Hmm.
love that you brought the things so that you could make the hotel rooms as predictable and recognizable
Hmm.
as you could for your kids. Is the cost of renting a hotel room versus staying with another family? Speak to
Oh,
that.
yes.
If you have children who struggle with that, is it worth it?
It's so worth it. Especially a lot of kids with neurodivergence, they struggle with, they can be more flexible, hypermobility. They can have more food allergies or dust allergies. They just seem to be more sensitive overall. We don't really know why yet. Science is still giving us that. But if we stayed in someone's home one time and their cat was jumping on my girls all night and they were sleeping on the floor,
Mm,
none of that went well. No one slept. That makes any church service or meal out with a pastor
yeah.
extremely hard. Um, so, yes, the hotel is
Yeah.
worth it. Even staying back, the kids don't have to travel everywhere with you. The kids don't have to be on the platform with you. If that's difficult for them, that's a high masking gonna hit burnout situation week after week after week. So definitely whatever you can do to, and you're not going to do it like other families. It's going to be different because your kids need
Mhm.
something different.
Tell us what burnout can look like. I presume that it's different person to person. What are some signs of burnout, either imminent or happening?
Yeah, burnout can happen neurotypical or neurodiverse. It is not
Mhm.
exclusive to neurodiverse people. So say that first. A lot of the signs of it are the same. Really tired, don't want to do anything, just low mood, exhausted, maybe some health problems, things like headaches. When your body is just saying no more. Um, Neurodiverse people, though, once they hit that, they're already more easy to have some kind of overload happening, high stress, meltdowns, shutdowns, and that's going to increase. And then the coming out of burnout tends to be longer. It tends to take
Mhm.
more care, more self care, more rest, almost a complete stop of the things that were causing the burnout to recover and then slowly be able to re enter what's happening. So, teens that are like, I can't go to school. I'm not going to go to school. I'm too tired. I'm too exhausted. I can't do it. They could be hitting burnout. A lot of our adult TCKs in college are struggling with some
Mhm.
kind of burnout after years of being overseas. And then they're hitting high paced college, high expectations, living on their own, trying to figure it out. And everything's hitting them at once.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, yes, of course, we're all prone to burnout. But if it is a neurodivergent person, we need to assume that it's going to take longer for them
Yep.
to come out of it. And maybe some gatekeeping on the part of the people who love them to make sure that they're being given the space and the time they need.
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. I'm working with a couple. One is a TCK, one is not, but coming out of burnout. And it's quite different for a neurodivergent person to really have to keep your sensory load low, slowly increase capacity and the window of tolerance we talk about what they can tolerate has gotten really small and practicing slowly making that bigger again. There's just a lot of factors at play that make
Yeah.
this a pretty big deal.
We talk about labels a lot, and the term label has kind of a negative connotation to it.
Hmm.
And even TCKs don't like to be labeled TCK, right? But in
Hmm.
your family's experience, to me, it's more of identifying something more than labeling something.
Yep.
It's knowing what that thing is. In your
Hmm.
family, when you did finally get the diagnoses that you got, what was the impact of that on your daughters and on you of finally identifying what this is?
It was a really awesome time in the
Hmm.
sense that we kind of knew what we were dealing with previously, but to have names for it and identification of the struggle, the label, it was really it was really neat because they were all finding out at the same time. And so the younger two were assessed in South Africa, and kind of the same person assessed them. And so then kind of laughing at their assessments of, look, I had this and I had this. And it was actually a really joyful time because it gave us names and words and vocabulary for what was going on. And then when my oldest was in college, and she also went through a whole assessment with a different psychologist, and she came back with, I have ADHD and it's inattentive, and oh, I have that too. It's so helpful because it lets them express and give more words to what they've been dealing with, what's happening in their internal world, what's hard for them. And then for me as mom, it's helped me teach them how to advocate for themselves, to talk about what they need, what's going on. So for example, my middle daughter, she has something hanging in her car that says, I have autism. If I can't speak, call my mom, and it has my phone number. Because if she were to even just get pulled over, just the policeman coming, a lot of times, that figure of authority, they can lose words and get dysregulated and not know what to do, and just need help. Thankfully, that hasn't happened, but it's there if she needs it. She works at a coffee shop. It's busy. They do like a free coffee on Thursday mornings, and she's able to communicate with her boss that I really don't want to work on Thursdays because then the coffee shop is full. There's tons of people. It's busy, lots of orders. And now they know her well enough that if she does come in and work, they have specific things they let her do. And if she needs, like, she'll give them a look and they'll go take 15 minutes because she needs to calm down, put headphones in. These labels, these diagnoses allow them to advocate for what they need and have a name for what's happening so they don't feel broken. They know their brain just works differently. It's very helpful.
You mentioned some of these are kind of accommodations that your daughters have
Yeah.
needed, like having that sign in the car. Around home, what are some of the things that you have found have been helpful for helping your daughters to find the home to be a more comfortable place for them?
Well, as mom, it can be extremely frustrating because lights are left on, freezers left open. They forget to feed the dog, and none of it's on purpose. It's like, oh, we never fed him. It's an exciting time getting young adults to do the things. I have sticky notes up around the house. Like whoever takes, our dog's name is Brisket. Whoever takes Brisket out last, the sticky note reminds them, lock the door, turn off the lights. Because they'll go to bed and I'll come out and all the lights are on. Just no awareness to a lot of those things. And that can be really frustrating as parents because it's like, she's a manager at a coffee shop. She can, go to work and do the things, but then come home and not be able to do the things. And so accommodation is recognizing she's used all the executive function she has at work. That's allowed her to be successful at work. That means at home, she needs the reminders. She needs to be able to just be herself and not be on, and trying to keep it all together and balancing that with, you still have to be responsible, make sure the stove is off, make sure the things
Yeah.
are done. Cleaning their room, organizing. It's called parallel play. And a lot of neurodiverse people find this helpful, even adults. Like, okay, you're going to do some work. I'm going to do some work. We're doing our own thing, but we're doing it at the same time. I do. All right, it's parallel play. Clean your room. Like, turn the music on. Both of you have to do it. And as long as they're both doing it, they can clean great. So different accommodations that just family works differently. I don't ever, go do this because then their demand avoidance kicks in. So I have to find a creative way to help them get the things done. But it's knowing what we're dealing with, knowing the why,
Yes.
lets us accommodate, and you just find a new way to do it.
Where can parents go? What kind of help is out there for parents to learn these kind of approaches, to learn some practical things that they can do to help their daughters to function better, especially when they're in overwhelm and whatever other hard periods of life or even every day at home? What are the
Yeah.
resources? Where do people learn these things?
There's a lot of good information. Honestly, just a good Google search. and start reading people's experiences, stories. I love Attitude Magazine. Their website is very well done and gives lots of advice. Sometimes I just, even if I still now, like, how do I get around this one thing? I'll go to their website. Dr. Stephanie Holmes of Neurodiverse Christian Couples, their podcast is fantastic with lots of experts, lots of episodes of females on the spectrum, lots of ministry families even that she's interviewed and talked to about their experience. She's neuroscientists that help executive function specialists. So that her podcast is a great place to learn about this in a faith community. But there's new resources coming out every day about neurodiversity, and especially in church and ministry and missions. And I'm so thankful that this topic's getting talked about more.
Yes. Before I ask you my last question, if you're comfortable doing this, can you tell us something wonderful about all of your daughters that doesn't have to do with them being neurodivergent? Can you
Yes,
just
I sure
praise them?
can. Yes. Elena is my oldest, and she's 23, and she's a theater teacher, and her theater is a great place to find your neurodivergent kids because they get to do all the fun things. She's extremely expressive. She speaks French the best out of all of us, and she was valedictorian of her class. So she's highly skilled and effective in what she does. Annalise, my middle, she's an incredible digital artist. She doesn't always like anybody to look at it, but she's a great artist. And I love looking at her work. She's so creative in every way. And at the coffee shop, you're really lucky if she draws something for you on your coffee mug. And then Abigail, she has been a leader since she was 2 in ordering everyone around on the playground. She is a leader in every way, and she's very outside the box. She's very ADHD. So certain days she's very ADHD and certain days she's very autistic, and she just makes life really exciting and fun.
Exciting and fun.
Yes.
You have such a mom vibe, for lack of a technical term. I wonder if there's something that, if there are people listening to us today who suspect that they're neurodivergent or who know, and who are just kind of, maybe they're in the middle of burnout, maybe they're at their wits' end, maybe they don't know what to do next. As a mom, what would you say to them? What encouragement would you give them?
It's really hard. It really is hard. And I think sometimes we don't want to admit even how hard it is. So being able to admit it is really hard. It's very challenging to think creatively. How do I get around this? How do we accommodate? How do we teach? How do we help? How do we advocate? It's very challenging. So having support is really helpful. So as a mom and as a coach, you need some help, some support, somebody to talk to, bounce ideas off of. Be encouraged, though, because these kids have talents and abilities, and they will grow, they will learn, they will adult for the most part, as long as they have the supports that they need, regardless of their function level. With support, they can do so well.
Is there anything that you really wanted to communicate today that we haven't gotten to, that you would like to add to what you've already said? And it's been so rich. Thank you.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to really get out there and find the resources. And maybe we can put in the show notes some of those resources, or you already have. Share, for instance, in Europe, the educational
Share International.
consultants. Yeah. I believe there's one for Asia. Really amazing resources available, even across Zoom. And it's worth the flight. I know it's not like you can just go to the doctor in town. It's worth the flight. It's worth the assessments. It's worth the time to really get out there and make sure you understand your family and your kids, and that you're equipping them the best possible for their life.
There seems to be some disagreement as to whether a standard psychiatric or psychological approach is as useful as more of a life coaching approach. For
Hmm.
parents who are wondering, what kind of practitioner do I need to connect my child or children with? What would be your advice for them?
For me, that I think has a lot to do with age.
Uh-huh.
Younger kids can do really well with art therapy, family therapy, behavioral, occupational. There's lots of professionals that work with kids, and even youth. If there seems to be some mental health or they have really high and low extreme emotion dysregulation, there can be therapy. Having a counselor, a therapist that works with kids or works with youth, that can be really helpful. I recommend psychiatry if there's medication involved. If you're thinking, I wonder if some medication would help, there's some great medications out, but it's not just an easy, here, take this. It's very regulated. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
What dose, what kind, which one, and each of your kids may need something different because of the way their bodies work. There's testing that can be done to help figure out what medications might be best for one person or another. And psychiatrists tend to be your medication people that know that the best. Having a therapist that really understands neurodiversity and the different thoughts around neurodiversity. So you can have very much, let's teach them skills so they can become as neurotypical as possible, all the way to this is just how they are, let them be free and be who they are. And there really needs to be somewhere in the middle. There's skills that they can learn and that can be very helpful in workplace and marriage and relationships and friendships. We need a little bit of both of those things. So having a practitioner that, whether it's a coach or a counselor, that understands what your goals are for your kids and what your kids' goals are for growing up, I think is very important.
Where can people read or hear more of what you have produced on these topics?
Yeah, I have some things at A Life Overseas, Velvet Ashes, Global Trellis. You can find me at all of those places. My own website is Jenilee Rachel, Jenilee, Rachel.com. And you can read all about me there and read about support that I offer and all of that on my website.
And I will link to your website as well in the show notes. And any other resources that you want me to link to, just let me know.
Sure.
And I'm happy to connect people further with you. Thank you so much for your kind wisdom and your hard-won wisdom on these topics. I can't think of a better person to lovingly discuss very complex things and very beautiful people. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your thoughtfulness. And I'll be releasing the next 2 or 3 segments of this 4-part focus soon. I will let people know when that happens.